This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Hi, Kaylee.
Hey, so good to
Welcome
see you.
to our podcast. I see.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you. We are really excited. This is going to be such an awesome interview. When I was preparing for this, I'm like, the questions, I could interview you honestly for like 3 hours and still have questions. So I'm really excited for our users and our followers and everyone to get to know you. And today we're talking about money personality, the money personality quizzes, and we're taking a deep dive kind of into your life and what your money personality quiz is. So let's get started. Okay, give us your background. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where do you live? All the things. Let's get to know you a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So my name's Kaylee Dunn. I live in Saratoga Springs, Utah. I've got 2 daughters. They're ages 5 and 3, and they're adorable. I'm a single mom, a recent single mom. I was married for 7 years and actually went through a divorce this year. So, I'll talk about that later, but that's kind of been a part of my journey and my financial journey, of course. I stay at home with my kids and I work part-time. I'm a graphic designer. So I love all things creative. I do freelance work. I'm actually a product designer with Cube Money because I'm also a money nerd, as you will see in my money personality. So it's kind of my 2 passions combined into one. And then I have some other companies that I work for as well. So let's see what else.
Look at the wall. Yeah. I'm like, look at the wall behind her. This is her creation.
This has been my passion project for the past couple of months. For those of you on audio only, I painted this like floral mural in my office. So it took me a very long time and it was really good. It was therapeutic. So
I'm assuming you did it freehand. Like this is just
yeah. I just painted it. I did some chalk outlines and just started going to town with all the colors. So
best. It looks so good. Yeah, we'll have to put a picture up. So all the audio, you'll have to go watch us on YouTube or on our
there you go.
See what she did. Okay. So how recent are you recently divorced? Like we're in less than a year, right?
Yeah, less than a year. It was this year in 2022. So right now it's October. Our divorce finalized in July. Yeah. So wow. Very recent, like we separated this year. So it was a fast process, luckily, but yeah. So really recent, lots of changes this year, tons of changes.
And you're still smiling. Amazing. Okay. So getting into your money personality, you took the quiz. Mm-hmm. What was your result?
Yeah, so I am a planner saver, which was not a surprise to me at all when I saw that result.
I was like, when you were taking the quiz and you were filling out the questions, were there ever questions where you were like, I could go either way? Or did you feel like most of the time it was very easy for you to respond?
Some of both. Yeah. Some of them I was like, oh, for sure that's me 100%. But others, of course, it's like, well, it kind of depends on the circumstance. And I would kind of be in between a couple. But yeah, I've definitely always been a saver for sure. And then a planner. I feel like when you're a kid, you don't have to plan all that much, but as I got older and as life got more complicated, I definitely like veered more towards like wanting everything written down and planned out and spreadsheet nerd, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Okay. So talking about your spending habits and planning, what is important to you? Like what are in your life? Like obviously if you were asking me, I'd be like my one kid, he's my whole world. Like you mentioned your kids, what else?
Yeah family is huge. Obviously, as far as money goes, I've been thinking about this and I really value being independent, like financially independent. I hate like having to rely on other people or borrow money or feel like I need things from other people. I really find a lot of confidence and peace in being able to provide for myself. Security is huge. I like to have like a good cushion. So if anything happens, I know I'm good and I don't have to go into debt. I feel like peace and my financial life, but also in all of my life is super important. And so I don't like the stress of like the unknown and not being prepared. So I feel like being financially prepared is one way that I give myself a lot of peace.
Okay.
And then just like flexibility, like quality of life for me and my kids. I don't want to like have to, like, if I do not work 40 hours this week, then we won't be able to like meet our needs or even some of our wants. So I've tried to build a life that I can be at home with my kids and work part-time and be smart with my spending so that I can have the peace of mind knowing that we have the flexibility to do what we need and want to do, but we're also set up for the future, if that makes sense.
Yep, it makes sense. So what I'm hearing is family super important to you, like your kids, financial security is important to you. And then do you get out, like, do you do stuff with friends? Are you a traveler? Anything else that you feel like plays a role in like what your core like importance in your life is?
I'm definitely a people person. Like I love people. I love talking with people, connecting with people. So, I spend a lot of time with my siblings, parents, friends. I'm really involved in church. Like community. I just love. It's probably too much. I try to jam pack too many good things in my life, but it's a very full life, very full.
Okay, so social, family, having you love what you do for work, all of those things play into probably your money personality and how you spend and how you save and all of those things. Okay, going back into your money personality, um, so do you like being a planner saver?
Yeah, mostly I really, really do.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, I love security and being financially independent. I feel like planning ahead really helps me feel empowered. Like I feel like I'm in control. I really like control in more
Yep,
ways
yeah,
than financial life, if I'm being honest. I'm
yeah.
working on that in my parenting. But I like having control over my life. And so I feel like finances is a huge area where I'm like, if I know exactly how much I have set aside, how much I'm spending, how much I'm bringing in, how much I need, I feel in control. Yeah, so that's really helpful. I'm like a bit of a nerd. Okay, maybe a lot of a nerd when it comes to like spreadsheets and like planning it all out and writing it down and like tracking expenses and sticking to the budget. It's almost like a game for me. Like sometimes when I talk about budgeting with people and like they have this negative connotation, I'm like, but isn't it fun to like, try to like stay within the numbers? Like this year was weird, but for the past several years in September, I've done Shelftember. It's like this challenge by this influencer I follow. And like you're supposed to do shelf cooking. So you do all your cooking based off of what you already have in your pantry and fridge and freezer. And you're only supposed to spend like $20 a week on groceries. And that's like so fun to me. I'm like, yeah, I can get so creative. Like I'm such a nerd with that. But and other people are like, you're crazy. That sounds horrible. I'm like, I don't know. It's like almost like a game.
Yeah.
So it works for me, I guess. It works.
It fits your personality. The more I've gotten to know you and get to know you, it definitely, I feel like and we'll talk about some weaknesses that come with
Yes.
this money personality. But tell me about your upbringing and your family, and we can talk about your marriage and what the dynamic was there. Was there financial stress at any point? I know with me, my husband, we were both brought up very differently with spending, and you develop spending habits, or you learn certain ways, like, oh, you can learn like money is a bad thing, or too much money is a bad thing, or we not the scarcity mindset, just depending on your upbringing. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Like it influences it a lot. I grew up in a very frugal home,
Okay.
oldest of 6 kids. my mom was raised on a dairy farm, and her parents are the most frugal people I've ever met. And they actually like did really well with their farm over the years, but I feel like they just spent bare minimum. And so she was totally raised that way. And, she's gotten a little bit more lax than what she grew up as, but very frugal. Just like, we never ate out. I mean, there was 8 of us, like, so we didn't eat out a lot. We didn't, spend a ton of money, but we just had tons of fun at home, lots of backyard sports, like home cooked meals. Like, it was an awesome upbringing. But yeah, it's definitely like, save everything you can, spend as little as you can. It was kind of how I grew up. And it's been interesting watching my parents as they've gotten older, and, they're in a great financial position and their kids are out of the house, and like, my mom's getting better at allowing herself to spend and upgrading her furniture and her house and things. And it's been cool to watch her go through that. So I feel like for me, as a kid, I did have like kind of a scarce mindset around money, and that it was like kind of bad to spend money, like some guilt around spending. But again, it was kind of a game for me. I really enjoyed earning money. I enjoyed saving money. Like, I always had little entrepreneurial gigs. Like, I would babysit, I would make like cards and sell them, jewelry. Like, I taught piano lessons from the age 13 on all through high school. And so by the time I graduated high school, I like never spent money with friends, like hardly ever. And I had like a good chunk of money saved up, which ultimately like was almost like a down payment for our first home that I had saved up as a teenager. And so I really enjoyed saving a lot. But I had a hard time spending. And like, when my friends would want to go to the mall or whatever, like, it was like painful for me to spend money. And so it was hard for me to enjoy that, or just feel like, well, we don't have to do this, or like, we could do something else that's free. And so I do regret, that I didn't just enjoy a little bit more,
Yeah.
which has, been a theme throughout my life. Yeah. So as I got older, of course, I graduate, I go to college. I remember, like, again, the game of trying to spend as little as possible. I remember like, I could do $17 of groceries a week. This is me freshman in college. I'm like, $17. I could do that. Like, I'm looking back, like, I don't know how that worked, but I survived.
This is a theme for you. And I'm like, you have gone by this theme, and it's not your parents, and it's not your parents' fault. I've seen this with my grandparents and my parents, and my grandparents they owned a small business. My grandpa owned an auto body shop, and they grew up in Las Vegas, and they started there, and they actually had the opposite and it's interesting to see people's spending habits depending on, their surroundings. Is it nature versus nurture? But they grew up very poor, and then they did well, and they had terrible spending habits because they weren't having money. And so your grandparents and your parents grew up, and it probably gets a little less with each generation as we see it, right? Your mom is now like, oh, wait, okay, we are fine. We have, we've saved, we have all this. I can spend money on upgrading furniture and other things. But it's interesting to see now with you, and then the cycle that's going to happen. You got married, and also we'll talk about that, like your ex-husband and how that plays into it, because my habits had changed, obviously being married, and you have to find some sort of balance between how you both grew up and then how that's going to be passed on to your daughters, and future too. Like, if you do, if you want to get remarried again and you have more kids, or you marry someone who comes from a different background, how that impacts your spending. But the theme I'm seeing with you, and like it goes generations back, is savers. Like, you guys have always been savers. You like to spend the least amount possible. It's fun for you. It's not like stressful, but you actually like saving money, and you like the game and the strategy behind it. So it is definitely a different strategy and like a different mindset. And it's a positive one. Like, you're not stressed about saving, or most people are, but you just look at it like, okay, how can we do this? Like, let's figure it out. let's talk about, you talked about a little bit of regret with spending. And I remember that in high school, you know, you'd go to eat lunch or you'd go to the movies and you're like, it's $8. Or back then it was like $7 to go to, you know, to get a ticket. And it would just probably, I can see with your personality might have crushed you a little to be like, Kate, is it worth it? Do I want to spend that much money on a ticket to go, you know, with friends? And a little bit of regret with not enjoying a little more because you did have, you know, savings and you were fine. So recognizing that, it is interesting. Let's talk about life changes and how that's impacted your money personality. You mentioned a little bit in your intro, you were married and now for 7 years, and now you're recently single. Obviously, spending habits have to change. So has that changed in your money personality? And also maybe give us a little bit of background too, because you were were you a stay-at-home mom? Have you always worked like throughout your marriage? Was there ever a time where you felt you and your ex-husband, was there like stressful periods? Did you always agree on money? Did he have the same, you know, was he the same money personality? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, great questions. So when we got married, we were young, we were 21. And so we were both in college and both like in that tight budget stage of life, which worked well for us. So like he was also pretty frugal. He lived within his means. And so we both just kind of like spent as little as possible. So that wasn't like too big of a transition, but I will say we have different priorities as far as what we are willing to spend money on, what we feel like is important. And so he like loves grocery shopping and getting deals and food. And like I said, I'm like $17 a week. Yeah, I could do that. So like he would go grocery shopping and come home with a bunch of stuff that I felt like we didn't need, like junk food or like stuff that we would normally never buy, but it was on sale. And I'm like, that caused some tension because I was judgmental about that. And I'm like, hey, like you didn't need to buy that. Like, why are you buying that? Like, let's stick to the budget. And
what was your reaction like when that would happen? Like, would you just give him a little bit of grief and like be huffing and puffing, or did you feel like it was a pattern, it was a consistent pattern in your marriage, and it like was always a little bit of tension around that type of spending?
Yeah, it varied over time. Like I would kind of be like, what the heck? Like, why did you buy all that stuff? And then I would feel guilty. I'd be like, okay, I shouldn't be like such a tightwad. Like I'm so cheap. It's really not that big of a deal. But then I'd also be like, but is that really where we want to like spend our money? You know, we didn't have a ton of income. And we were in school and I just felt like, I mean, I just didn't care about it. Like it didn't provide value to my life. Whereas like he got a lot of enjoyment out of it. So it was worth it for him. And for
Me and
me,
I are similar. I'm like, give me treats, I will enjoy that. That's where food is where I spend my money. Like truly, honestly. And it's so different for people because my husband's like, he can even go the whole day and not eat, or he can pack granola bars and apples and like be fine. And to me, I'm like, no, I if I have lunch plans, I'm set. Or like if I'm going to dinner with friends, like that makes my whole day. Like I would rather buy that than a shirt, you know?
Yeah.
I can relate to him. So you guys, so he grew up, you know, and then okay, to move through your marriage. So this was college, it was very, you know, everybody is, I feel like when you first get married, especially in Utah, there's a younger marriage. Usually the age is a little bit younger, and most people are still in school and you're in the struggle, like we're just trying to get through school and we're just making ends meet phase. So then what happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, that was hard sometimes where I was just going through this internal war of like trying to control everything again. Like it's vulnerable to share your financial life with someone else. That's a transition. Like we both have access to the same amount of money or the same pot of money, right? And we're both spending from it. And they value things that I don't. And so it's like this dance of like, well, I don't want to be a jerk. So, you know, I'll try to be nice about it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. Not a big deal. But then there's a little bit of resentment or feeling like I'm trying to like stick to the budget over here and you're just kind of like doing whatever you want at the store. And we tried lots of different budgeting methods, and he was really great to like, he would, try whatever, like go along with, like, I just cared way more about it than he did, or that most people do, if I'm honest. So we tried Mint, we would track our expenses, but Mint, you just like set it and forget it, and it doesn't actually change your behavior because you're still just spending whatever, and then maybe occasionally you check in, you're like, oh, we spent more than we thought, darn. So we did that. We did YNAB, which is a lot more hands-on, but really was not sustainable for us, and just kind of a huge pain of like putting in every expense. And it was just kind of finicky. So ultimately we used spreadsheets. And again, like we did that for 2 years, which I still don't know how we did that, but like I would like manually put in like every expense and keep track of the budget. Like it was not fun. So my whole idea was like, okay, honey, before you go to the store, like remember to check the balance on the spreadsheet of like how much we have left in the grocery budget, and then try to stick to that, but like, so I just felt like I was the one that had to be the bad guy and was trying to manage it. And I'm like, no one wants that like parent-child dynamic, like boo. Like, no, like it's an equal partnership. And so we would have like conversations together and decide together like what we wanted to spend. So honestly, like it was definitely not a huge pain point in our marriage. I feel like most of the time we saw pretty eye to eye on money, but there was like, it wasn't great. It wasn't super fun to try to like feel in control, but also not try to like control him, if that makes sense. Yes. So let's see, what year would it have been? I mean, several years into our marriage when Cube Money was born, and it went through the beta phase for a while. And so we didn't use it as much then, but a few months into that, once the product started getting really good, we did start using Cube. And that was super helpful because I didn't have to be the bad guy anymore. It was like we sat down and created our cubes, created our budgets, and we both lived from that budget. And it forced us to both look at, if I'm going grocery shopping, I have to open my cube and see that there's $200 left in there. And so it wasn't as much like asking permission. We didn't have to ask permission for everything anymore. Like, hey, how much should I spend? Hey, is this okay? How do you feel about this? Because that just felt like we were babysitting each other. Like it was just not great. And so it kind of became the middleman and just solved that for us, where like we didn't have to talk about it a lot. It was just like we knew exactly how much money was in each category, and we would just both spend from it. And that was honestly super helpful. Another experience and thing I'll talk about is like fun money spending. As our careers and our lives progressed, like we graduated from college, we were making better money. Like we had plenty to like, put aside for savings and things. Like I felt like, okay, I think it's time to upgrade some of our furniture or like our house, because we just had all these like used like mismatched things. And so I'm like, yeah, let's get some throw pillows. Let's like paint the house. Like to me, that felt really important. It helped me feel good, like happy being in my house and feeling like it was adding value to our home and our family. And so I'm like, yeah, let's, buy these things. And he's kind of like, really? Like, who cares? Like he didn't care about that. But again, for him, he liked maybe food or certain like types of entertainment or games or like different things that he would buy, where I'm like, really? Like, that's what you're spending your money on? I'm like, that's not benefiting our family at all. So that caused some resentment. And we had very few arguments about money, but like, I remember a couple of those and just like, no, I don't really think you should spend $30 on that game. And until we introduced fun money budgets, and that was a game changer. I never felt like we could include that in the budget before. Like, when we were in college, we just didn't have extra. But once we started having individual cubes It's like Kaylee's fun money, his fun money. And it was just like no questions asked. And we each just got the same amount every month, and you could spend it all, or you could let it build up, make a bigger purchase. Like, best idea ever. I don't know why we didn't do it sooner, but that was super, super helpful with our marriage and our communication. And the other thing that was helpful with my money personality is that it allowed me to spend money guilt-free on fun things. Because I knew everything else was accounted for, I wasn't like taking away from groceries, gas, like any of those things, our savings goals. I knew that we had allocated that money specifically for my fun money. And so I was able to like go shopping, and I love earrings, and I'll buy like fun earrings or clothes or throw pillows or just like dumb stuff that doesn't really matter, or go out to lunch with friends. And it could come from my fun money cube. And like that honestly has been a huge game changer for me in some of my weaknesses, as far as being like cheap and not being able to enjoy the moment and not enjoying spending. That's been really, really helpful.
It's changing your spending habits for sure. I mean, and it's so, I love that you're so self-aware though. A lot of people, when taking, this quiz, or when we're talking about, even I had my husband take it, and a lot of people don't realize their spending habits or their weaknesses, and realize like, hey, where you're very self-aware and you're like, I already know, like, this is where I came from, this is how I was raised, this is where I am a tightwad in some ways, and then your husband and your ex-husband and you wouldn't necessarily agree. Do you feel like getting further into your life, you had kids, you guys progressed, you're pretty much on the same page, you'd use different ways to budget, and then you get a divorce?
Mm-hmm.
Were you, obviously there are other stressors, right, when you get a divorce that are, more stressful, but the money aspect of dividing assets and you being a single mom, how did that impact your like spending, or what was your gut reaction? Were you feeling like, oh, no problem, this is easy? Or tell me a little bit about what you felt during that time.
Yeah, great question. And to answer your previous question, I have always been a stay-at-home mom, but have worked from home part-time on and off. So that's kind of varied, like how much I've worked. But luckily, like I had a good like career in place where I was just working a few hours a week, but like it was, a helpful second income. So yeah, when it came to, okay, we're getting a divorce, which finances luckily had nothing to do with the divorce. So I feel really grateful that we were able to work well together in that area. But I'll say a couple of things. For a lot of women specifically, that is a huge, like finances are a huge stressor when it comes to the prospect of divorce. And for me, I didn't feel that. Like it was painful, very painful to divide our net worth in half, and like all these things we had been building and working towards, to just be like, okay, we're just going to cut it in half and I'm kind of starting over. Like that was painful, not going to lie. But the things that again gave me peace and empowerment and independence, first was knowing how much I was spending. Like I knew exactly my expenses because I'd been using Cube for months and months. And so not only do I already have like all my bills in one place, but also like I have a history of how much I spend with groceries and gas and utilities. Like I already know what I need to live. And it changed a little bit with the divorce. Like a couple of my expenses went down a little bit because he left, but mostly, I knew exactly what to expect. And so I knew how much income I needed. And I was able to create a budget for me and for him, and like okay, how would this look going forward? And how can we both be okay and get all our needs met? And like, that was super helpful. And just the fact that we had been really intentional with saving and putting aside money and sticking within the budget. Like we had savings set aside and we had a little bit of retirement, and we had like everything set up so that we weren't living paycheck to paycheck. Like that would have added a whole nother layer of stress.
And you were involved. I think that's another big factor to point on too, is a lot of women in your situation, or like my parents got divorced. They're in like a 5-year divorce battle. Like it's taken years. But I know one thing for my mom is she raised the kids. She was at home and she hadn't worked necessarily, you know, for a long time, but also dividing the assets can be tricky. But she also, and this is on her, and this is like where I think we as women want to build things and change these behaviors for the next generations. Like I have a son, but if we do have more kids and I end up with a girl, you know, I want to teach her to be involved where you are not looking at, or your husband, because even now I tell my husband, I'm like, you're complacent. Like if something happened to me, I don't know that you know how to pay the utilities. You know what I mean? And in a lot of marriages, it's like there's one person that's a little bit stronger, or there's one person, male or female. But for you, you know, for the trend in history and, you know, male, female, it's been men and they were in charge of the finances. So for you, first of all, kudos to you for being involved before that. But also for women, it's true. And I do know some of my friends would be in the boat of like so overwhelmed by having to like even look at finances or figure it out if they were separating, that they wouldn't be able to handle it. It would be too much, and they wouldn't know, and they didn't know what was going on. And I hear that a lot too with I had another friend that is going through a divorce, and she's like, he was a lawyer and he took care of it, and he was the one that, and she's like, I have no idea what's even in any of the bank account. Like she has no clue. And so for you, I mean, it is probably obviously, and like, so sorry to hear like going through that and you emotionally, and but the financial part, like you being so involved, and even when you said, oh, I helped him help a budget, I'm like, you are a good person to be like, this is what we're doing when we're separating. Here's what we know and what we have. But my biggest thing too is teaching women, and even like I said, my husband, to like be a partnership and be as involved, because now, you know, going through it, it's, you were set up so well, and so was he, and he benefited from you being, you know, so on top of it. But that it doesn't sound like the financial aspect of getting divorced was as, you know, stressful as it could have been, because you felt okay. It's not ideal, and you were like, it killed me to like split the net worth, but overall, because of the way of, you know, your spending habits and how you set it up, like you guys were both probably walked away feeling like that is not one thing we have to worry about necessarily so much, which is huge.
It's huge, 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 huge. Yeah, such a blessing, honestly. And I really feel like your financial position affects so many aspects of your life and just your stress level. And I mean, it's big. It's really big. So I feel really grateful that I just knew what was going on and like felt empowered about and in control of the situation. So
when it comes to, this leads into my next question, when it comes to money, now you're in this new position, you're in a totally new phase of life, you're starting sort of from scratch. What do you worry about the most now?
Yeah. Honestly, like I don't worry too much about money. Like, because I know, again, like how much I'm bringing in, how much I'm spending. Like this year obviously has been hard because, of course, dividing up all my assets, but then the stock market just not doing great, and inflation. And it's like, wow, like, you know, some of my goals that I had, it's just going to take me a lot longer to get there at the rate that we're going. So yeah, I feel like certain things that I worry about is like, yeah, what if there's unexpected expenses, like large ones, like if I need to buy a new car, or, you know, the water heater goes out, like I own my home, like home repair expenses, things like that. So for me, I find a lot of comfort in having like a fully funded emergency fund that will cover a couple months expenses, having a few $1,000s set aside for home repairs, and building. I just bought a new car, a used car this year. And so building that fund back up, because I always just like having enough cash to like repair or to replace a vehicle. So that helps me compensate for some of like my worries and concerns as far as money. Right now, honestly, it's just like this balance of like, how do I be a good stay-at-home mom and be present for my kids when we're all just like so emotionally strapped, but also like I'm working more than I used to, and it's a lot. Like it's a lot because I could work a little bit less and just like break even, but I'm not about that life. Like I have to, like I need to be putting aside money for savings to feel good about my financial position so I'm not stressed. And so it's been challenging because I'm like, okay, if I work more, then we'll be financially more stable. But then it's taking away, it's just like that balance of family time and work and like how to segment this. And yes, the mom guilt and sleeping, trying to get sleep.
I feel you, and that's the thing is like I can relate to this so well. I'm like, obviously I am married, but we both work, and I choose to work because I love it. I'm like you, like yeah. I need to be working, but I will tell you, like taking away and working to build a better life, it is a balancing act, especially when you're doing it on your own and feeling like, okay, I can put in these hours and do work, or I can hang out with my 3-year-old, or what am I, and then it's like throw in childcare and we're done. I'm like the cost of childcare, I'm like, oh, but to me, I'm like the systems that you have set up, I mean, you're doing so well. And I just think you're inspirational, Kaylee. I'm serious. I'm like, it's really cool to hear from, and I personally too, I have, divorce was such a negative, thing for so long. And I mean, even when my parents got divorced, it was just traumatic for all of us kids, and we were adults. I mean, it is emotionally, we're still like, all of us are still trying to find a balance. And then you throw in, dividing time between the parents and the holidays and the emotional part of like having grown up in a house that was, my parents were married for 30 years and then it's not. And you go to Christmas, or we're going to my dad's this weekend, and it's like, who gets Halloween with, the grandkid, how to divide, and it's sad, and it is like emotional, like even with you, the financial aspect of it, but still, even the days you don't have your kids or all of that, it's hard. I mean, it's so hard. So I just am like, I'm so proud of you. I like feel like I'm just so proud. I'm like, you've done such a good job for yourself and your family. And it's really cool to see. I mean, and money, the personality, it definitely worked in your benefit in this situation. And in your life, I mean, you're responsible too. I'm like, let's talk a little bit before we go. We'll wrap up, but
can I interrupt you with one thing? I was just thinking, so like I mentioned, I was always the more into finances and the nerd about it, as compared to my ex-husband. Like he was frugal, but he just didn't really care. But the big question when we were dividing up money and setting up budgets and like planning for the future, I'm like, okay, I'm just really curious, like, are you going to use cube money like going forward as a single person? Cause like I was totally planning to. And he's like, yeah, I honestly am, like, it works so well. And I was like, yes. We converted him. So I just thought that was funny. And it was just like, he saw the power of it. He was like, oh yeah, this works really, really well. So anyways, I just had to throw that in there. I thought that was like pretty great.
I'm like, he's still a user. That is a testament too, because you guys had to divide up your account. I love that. Last thing, tell me with your, obviously, I don't know about your dating life and all those things. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into that, because I would be very curious about what's going on in Utah right now with your dating life. But with your future, and we talked a little bit about your weaknesses and being too frugal or too spending, and then we talked about your strengths with your money personality and you being the planner saver that you are, right? What is like where's your end goal finances? Like, where do you hope to be, even if it's for, a year from now? If you're like, listen, I started over, I want to own my house, or I want to do this. Like, tell me, one thing that you're like, this is where I want to be, and I will like what you're working towards.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would like, well, there's lots of things. I'm like, you want the 1-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan? No.
We'll just put up your list right here.
Just share the spreadsheet with everybody. No. Yeah, so I had a rental property. Well, we had a rental property, which was really great. Like, I really want to get to a place where I'm financially independent, where I can have some passive income, like multiple streams, and be able to like work part-time. I would love to get married again. And I feel like my ideal situation would be like, we both work from home, like part-time, like we both have like some side gigs or some passive income coming in that we're managing, and we can like do a lot as a family and be there for our kids. So I mean, that's like the ultimate goal. Spend time together. Yeah. And so it's a balancing act though, because I'm like, if that's my ultimate goal, I don't want to sacrifice, well, then I'm not going to spend any time with my kids right now, so I can save all the money so I can get to that point. Like, that's counterproductive. So for me right now, it's like, how can I create the life that I want now, that's like, we still are able to do a lot together and do all the things that make us happy, and spend money where needed and where wanted, and be a little bit more giving with, gifts and experiences. But also preparing, like setting aside enough money so that we can prepare for that future. So I would love to be able to have a rental property again. So with the divorce, like we each took one house. So that's a goal that I have in the next few years, is to have another rental property, buy another house, rent this one out, something like that. But yeah, that's something like that I just really want to be more intentional about, allowing myself to spend within budget, right? Like my fun money budgets, my family entertainment, eating out, those budgets have been able to slowly increase over the years as my income has gone up. And so I think that's really important for me and for my future and my family, of being able to enjoy our life as we live it while still preparing for the future. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Yeah.
We're going to keep tabs on you. I'm going to check back in. We're going to say, hey, here we are, 2023. Where's Kaylee at?
Yeah.
We're going to see you with your rental property and be so proud of you. Thank you for coming on, Kaylee. I love hearing about your life and your story. Seriously, I can relate in so many ways as a woman and as a mom. And it's really cool to see, like, you're still bright and happy and just like plugging along, and how much you love Cube and finances. I'm so grateful we got to spend this time together and I got to interview you. You're so great.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Hey, we will chat. I can't wait for everyone to hear this. Everyone, this is Kaylee Dunn. She is our Tell Me Your Money personality.
Planner saver.
She is proud of it, and we are so happy. We can't wait to share this with our users. We will chat soon. Thank you so much, Kaylee.
Okay, talk to you later.
Hey, bye.